Yep.
Yeah, I think we
All right, I think we are live. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon. I know that it's been a full conference, so thank you for sticking with us. And this is the Tech Upskilling for Legal Aids session, so hopefully you're all in the right place. My name is Susan Vincent. I'm the Legal IT Manager at Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles, where I do work with our case management system, with our data, with our dashboards, with our business processes, anything they let me touch and that I don't immediately break.
Can you guys hear me? Yes? Okay. My name's America Valdez, and I am with Community Legal Aid SoCal in California. I am HR Director. I've been with them for about 4 years. We service Orange and LA counties. We have 4 different locations, and we have a staff of 145 employees. So welcome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Josh Lazar, and the levels are going to go lower in just a second. See the guy nodding back there. I am the founder and CEO of Tech Think Tank. We provide services, strategy, and software development to nonprofit organizations. So I've been on a lot of panels today, and I've watched some, and usually they all sit down. We're not going to do that, or at least I might not. So the first thing we're going to do is not talk to you. We're going to listen. So what we'd like you to do, and this is, when I say you, this is being broadcast live to YouTube. So that means everyone here on February 2nd in Charlotte, and everyone there on YouTube live right now, or even if you're watching this after this presentation, there'll be about 4 interactive exercises we're going to go through today, because we want to hear from you. We don't just want to tell you information, but we will do that too. So first, what we'd like you to do for about 5 minutes, I'll give you a 1-minute cue, meet a neighbor, get to know you, get to know each other. But what we really want to know is, what does tech skilling, upskilling mean to you? And what do you want to get from this presentation? So if you can all get into groups of like 2, 3, 4, whatever that feels like to you, you have 5 minutes on the clock, talk to each other, learn who you are, and let us know what you want to get from this presentation. We'll ask your questions in just a moment.
We've got about 2 minutes left. For those of you who just joined, we are answering what does tech upskilling mean to you, and what are you hoping to get from this conversation?
We have less than 1 minute, so when we're done, we're gonna ask you that feedback live. And I'm gonna check online if you are watching with us to see if you posted anything on LinkedIn. I should know. We're done. Thank you. I appreciate it. And we're done. So everyone, if you want to stay in your groups, feel free. If you want to turn back in, that's fine. If you're sitting at home, that's wonderful. If you want to join the conversation and you're not here live, you can go to the Tech Think Tank LinkedIn page, and we have a post that we already curated for this. So you can add your own comments throughout this presentation live. And if you're doing this weeks later, it'll probably be online too. And that would be great to bring your ideas into this room live while we're having this conference on February 2nd in Charlotte. So Jada is going to be our LSA guide to have you talk about this. So we want to get like 3 people to figure out what tech upskilling means to you and what do you want to learn. So who would, yep, right there, thanks Tim.
Hi, I'm Jim. Sorry. I'm the IT manager for Utah Legal Services. We have between 70 and 80 users, and across the whole state, 4 different sites. What tech upskilling means to me is bringing that baseline of your users to be able to use their tools that they need to use to be able to do their job, and how I can support them in that way. I've run into quite a few obstacles with this. The big group trainings, a lot of people seem to zone out and not pay attention. And then the one-on-one or two-on-one trainings seems to overwhelm people. And then when they need to ask questions, they are so overwhelmed, they don't know what questions to ask. So I'm hoping with this, I can find some better strategies to train those people with new tools and everything like that.
We have 2 more. Let's get 2 more people. Thank you.
All right, who's going to make me run the farthest? Hi, I'm Ashley. I agree with that tech upskilling means to me. What I would like to learn is some patience in trying to train individuals who have different skill levels, because I find myself rather frustrated answering the same question over and over again, and oh, this doesn't work, but no, it's not that, it's you. So I would like to learn some patience and some tips and some Zen and everything like that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Robin Perry. I am the Technology and Training Manager at Kids in Need of Defense. There's about 500 of us across 16-ish offices, a couple countries. I've lost track. What I'm hoping to get out of this, I've set the bar really low, but I want to find a way to help attorneys get over that hurdle of not wanting to learn the thing that will eventually help them. And I don't know how to do that. I say that as a hypocrite because I was that attorney and I didn't want to learn my new case management system. So how do you get over people like me? Is what I want.
I think we're good. So thank you so much for that. We're hoping to answer some of those questions, if not all of them. And so we really wanted to start with what will you take away from this conversation? You've already brought to the fore many of those things. We really want to empower you and to say, yes, you are in the right place. You can do this. The whole premise of upskilling is that your staff have some skills already. They are skilled workers, but there are additional skills that are going to help them, like you said, do their jobs more efficiently, hopefully reduce their stress, not increase it, and help them to serve your clients better. So that's what we're hoping that you take away. Some really practical tips and also just different perspectives. We come from different backgrounds. We have different organizations. We've taken different approaches to this challenge. There's not a right or a wrong answer, but there are definitely some lessons learned that we hope to be able to share with you today.
We too are looking for patience, so hopefully we can learn some techniques and walk away with some of those. But yes, we are all on the same page with that. Okay, what's the next one?
So back to this mic, I'm making the tech guys work for it, proving that they already are upskilled. So tech upskilling, as you all mentioned, is again just this, taking skilled folks and giving them more skills to do their work. We assume that you hired them for a reason, and that you don't want to just go out and hire new technologists or people that have the tech knowledge. You want people who are already there, who already have the expertise, the investment of your organization to be able to use new and better tools, or maybe old tools that they just never got around to picking up. And really, this is a fundamental matter because, A, most states now require attorneys to have some base level of tech expertise or skill, because it is the way that we serve our clients best, is to use the best tools available, which involves technology for better or worse. You can't, physically go to every single one of your clients' homes every time you want to talk to them and expect to have an efficient law practice and help everyone you need to help. And so technology really bridges the gap for us in distance, in language, in all sorts of different ways. And so you're here because you're probably someone who cares more about technology at your organization than average. Maybe you're the only one who cares about technology at your organization. Hopefully that's not the case. But you're here because you're invested, and we're hoping to, again, empower you to bring other people on board, to get their buy-in, to help build those skills within your organization. And so I think we're going to talk a little bit about when should you really be starting this journey? What are the prerequisites or the baseline?
So the LSC has, as all of you probably know, 2023 baselines. And in the baselines, there's actually a section on training. Did everyone know that here? Yes, that's good. It's section 12. There's 2 pages of it, of the 42 pages in that baseline. And it tells you what your baseline should be for training. So if you read it when it first came out and you didn't read it since then, that is probably the best way to start. And the bar, as thankfully someone said earlier, is set kind of low. We just need to make sure that we have some of the baseline things you need. And some of the resources we have on these slides that you'll see and you can receive online has some ways to get resources of how to learn and educate and grow in there. So if you, we'll talk about not only the baselines, but technological baselines. So LSE baselines are one thing, but if you are a technologist and the IT director or administrator in your organization is using a user account that's also a global administrator account every single day, you might want to work on those things and then take this conversation there too. If you aren't working with, say, multi-factor authentication in your organization, there's some core things you need in technology before you get to the point where you need to upskill from an administrative process. So if you are the sole person, and there are some here, we talked to some when I went out into the crowd, this is something that hopefully will help you when we talk more about it. But when it comes to the baselines of what you need to do before we get to upskilling tech, you need to have a little bit of a baseline of what's in your own organization first. So what I would do if I were in your shoes is to find out what we have on the LC baselines. If you haven't read it since it came out recently, read it again, go to section 12, look at the two pages on training, and make sure you're already there. And then maybe the other 40 pages to make sure everything else is looking pretty good. If you think to yourself as a technologist, or even a technologist and someone who does learning and development, you look at these baselines, and even if you're not a LSC funded organization, or even if you're not a legal aid organization, if you're just a nonprofit, and you can do these things, and you feel very comfortable that if someone were to look at your organization and go, yeah, that's going to check every box, at that point, all the stuff that Susan and America have done in their own organizations with and without grant funding might be really, really useful to you to make sure you have then a baseline of the knowledge you have in your organization.
Just from a practical point of view too, right? Like if you have 8 different offices and at each office you're using a different system or software, that's 8 times as much work for your upskilling. So maybe start thinking about how can we centralize, how can we prioritize, how can we get some core consensus about what tools we're using, and then you can start building on those and training on those, which is what we're going to go into next. So America?
Okay, so you have the baseline, right? You have kind of the fundamentals. Everybody has the same technology based on their role, et cetera. Well, today I'm going to talk about kind of what we've done. We are going to talk about 2 different approaches that are very different. And, you know, at CLA SoCal, we're a learning organization, and technology is important, and we believe that, it's important for the future of the workforce. And so we've invested more in a formal program that's going to be transformational for our staff to make sure that we're able to upskill their technology competence, essentially. And so for the past year, I've been leading a committee with other champions in the organization that are experts in what they do, including IT, legal services staff, operations, so on and so forth. And we've been leading a project team that is going to develop a technological program to be able to then launch and give the new hires and our current staff the necessary skills that they need to be able to have a baseline. I heard somebody mention have a baseline competence in technology. So it is a big undertaking, right? And I couldn't do it alone. I actually have our Director of Operations, Maxine, who is also co-leading this initiative with me, and so that shows you how invested the organization is, and it does have leadership support. So that really was the first step. Now that once we had the leadership support, then the second piece was to get funding. We really can't do much without it, right? And so that was the second thing. We applied for a TIG grant. We have a TIG grant. And so we've been working with a TIG grant who's been funding this project to help us then develop competencies for each software. We were able to conduct an assessment, create assessments, create training programs, and we'll be using our LMS to do that. So hopefully this will then ensure that everybody has a baseline. Again, some people are in intermediate, advanced. That's not our goal. Our goal is to create a baseline of what does everybody need to do their job specifically. And then from there, if they want to upgrade their competence, right, then it'll be a development program that they will have access to do so, but it's not going to be required. This will then help new hires hopefully come in, and there'll be a streamlined process because everybody's going to learn the same way, right? And then also the learning curve will be shorter because people are not going to be training, right? I'm sure like in many organizations, one person learns it this way, one person learns it that way. the other unit does it this way, and everybody kind of has his own way. We're going to streamline that into what's the best practice for CLA SoCal, and that way everybody has a universal language of this is how it's done here. And from there, they can then do things based on their preferences. Additionally, because we have funding, we were able to hire a consultant to help us with that. We're not experts, and this does require expertise. And so we hired a consultant to help us come in and, who's an expert in adult learning, who is an expert in creating development programs, who's an expert in training, has background in academia. And so it's a team of them. We work with one specific person, but there is a team behind them. They have came in and they have been able to help us with that. And then lastly, I want to mention technology changes all the time, and adaptability and sustainability is something that we have in our forefront since the beginning. How can we create a program that's sustainable? So that way, as the technology changes, we have a program that can easily adapt and change, and so that it's not 10 years old and we're still teaching the same thing. So that's been a challenge that I want to share up front with you guys. But again, that's on top of mind as we develop these trainings and these assessments.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we did at LAFLA, and to some extent it's the opposite, which is that we have many of the same values. We want our staff to have the skills they need to succeed and to serve our clients. But when I first started doing tech trainings, I was a managing attorney of a unit, our intake team specifically, and I noticed specific needs that my team had. And so as part of this, I started doing Tech Tuesdays and having folks have the opportunity to come in. We established a format early on that has stuck, which is that I'll present for about half an hour on a specific topic, then I'll have any questions about that topic, and then I'll have any questions about anything. And it really provides people with an opportunity to come in and get their questions answered. And as a direct supervisor, I was able to say, okay, you have to attend to this training. You may attend this training. I'm going to record it, and you can watch it later if that's the way that you prefer to learn, or if you need to review it. And so it really started very, very organically, and it didn't need a lot of buy-in. I didn't have to go ask for permission. I didn't have to ask for resources. I was able to just say, okay, you all need to try right-clicking before you say you can't do something. If you do that, there's a menu with options in English that I know you speak, and you can see them. And if it's not there, then you can come and ask the question. And so even some stuff that, we laugh and it sounds simple, but if you didn't come up on that technology, it's not intuitive. If you're using a touchpad and maybe you don't know the shortcut for doing the right click on a touchpad, you don't know how to navigate that, it's not intuitive. And so really starting at the basics and giving people an opportunity to opt in and access those resources. This is particularly useful when staff are tech hesitant. Again, with very few exceptions, this is optional. It's opt-in. Folks can come. Now in my current role as the lead IT manager, I make this available to the entire staff. We don't do it every week, but every few weeks we'll have the same thing. And like I said, it provides space for people to ask questions and learn without judgment and without worries that this is going to be part of their performance evaluation. I'm not in HR. This is not on their, with, again, very few exceptions, it's not on their development plan. And so, again, there's a little bit less pressure. And so folks are more free to come in, experiment, and admit that they don't know something. The pace of this may be much slower than something more structured, because, again, it is kind of opt-in. People don't necessarily know what they don't know, and so they might not come even if they really should. And so there are some weaknesses to this approach. But it does give you kind of the ability to start going and ramping up, to start building your library of resources, to start building some buy-in, to get staff excited about technology, and to have those few folks, those few champions, they're coming in and saying, I have questions. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we have this tool? Could I do this? Can we get a tool that does this? Oh, that's the tool we've had for 10 years. Yes, it can do that. And those are the really fun things that you can start to really get that buy-in as you go. And you don't have to necessarily, have everyone signing the dotted line up at the beginning to really start to build an effective program. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about, how do these two approaches complement each other? How are they different? And when we were looking at this, I found a Harvard Business School article that really talked about the difference between transformational change and adaptive change, and really thinking about, which one of these is your organization more ready for? Which one would be more effective at your particular organization? And so, America, do you want to talk about some of the strengths of your approach?
Certainly. So similarly to Susan, actually, we chose our approach. A lot of it was informed from staff surveys. We have an annual staff survey where it's really comprehensive, and we ask people about culture, DEI, resources, all sorts of things. And some responses, I wish we had Adobe, right? Sure, let's show you. I wish we had Teams, or I wish we had some of the basic technology softwares that we were already using, or had in comments that they wish they would use it in this way. And then we also had a lot of people say, I want to learn this, I want to learn that, how do we do this? And so that really was, what informed the program. Additionally, we chose the transformational approach because we already had leadership buy-in, and then of course we had funding, and we really wanted to show staff that we were committed to their development and to increase their skills, and that is a good way to do that. And so that's why we chose that approach. We are using a project management framework, and so it is a project, right? And so it's a lot of time commitment up front. We meet every other week, pretty much the committee does. It is a lot of time and investment, but again, that's why it shows commitment to the staff. With this transformational approach, again, we have assessed the staff, we've conducted focus groups, we had interviews to understand their wants and their needs. We surveyed all staff again, and then from there we've created competencies for each software, and we've created assessments. And we hope that in the future we'll have training paths for those people that want to learn more above the baseline, right? We want to be able to provide everything to people that they want, but also have financial restraints, and so we can't do it all. So we are starting with the fundamental, the baseline, right? This is what you need to learn to do your job, and this is what you need to do. And then from there, we're going to have development programs that are optional for people to then increase their tasks or their competence from basic to intermediate, or let's say from intermediate to advanced. We're also using an LMS, a learning management system, that's partially funded from our TIG grant. Thank you, TIG. And we are using that as a full comprehensive HR payroll system. And part of that is we have an LMS. We use Paylocity. We love it. And so that's what we're using to then roll out the training programs, and we could use it for other purposes too. Lastly, again, it does show that you are committed to the staff, and people are excited about it. They've been asking for it, and they talk about it, and they'll ask, hey, when is this coming? And so, it really shows that we want to give them something. I think that one of the disadvantages to this approach is, again, there's a lot of time and effort up front. And so, with Susan's approach, she's been able to give them tidbits, little by little. And so, again, we're discussing two different approaches, but based on your organization, size, commitment, all those things, you can kind of decide which approach best fits you, and or maybe a combination of both.
I think that's really important to realize is that these two approaches, even though they kind of seem opposite, they do complement each other, because it's very likely that, even if you start with a transformative approach, you get all these things in place, you want to then be able to have those intermediate and advanced level, you want to have those opt-ins, and so it's going to be more incremental. Or maybe you have a new software that comes out that you haven't established the baselines yet, and so, you're going to end up in both of these camps at some point if you stay in this long enough. And I think that, again, the real strength of the adaptive approach is that you can start where you are with what you have with very, very little buy-in. And as you grow, you can do that proof of concept of like, oh, this person or this team really didn't have the skills or expertise 12 months ago, and now they're doing this thing. Well, how did that work? Why is that working for them? Why can't my team have that? They can. And so you can really kind of have a snowball effect with kind of doing a more ground-up approach. The downside, of course, is that it's not systemic. You may have those pockets where there is a gap, where there is less learning, less competence, less skills, and that may be due to just, who's in the department, who's leading the department, a lack of buy-in, or it can just be that, those folks really are very busy with other things, and it has not been made clear to them that this is a priority. And so at some level, you will eventually need that upper level buy-in, but you can get quite a ways before then. And so I'm going to let Josh take this.
Yeah, so one thing I will say, because we got some knowledge from the audience beforehand, I think part of the patience that you might need with the people that you're trying to upskill, some of these approaches with the long time enduring over and over and consistent approach would help with that too, if you have the ability and opportunity to do that consistently over time. That's what when I was hearing that, that's what I was hearing, was that could help with someone who needs to be told more than once or twice to get something right. And everyone has different abilities and retains knowledge different ways. So from the audience, I thought that was definitely a takeaway, even when we're just talking up here. So there is, for everyone, this is a self-reflection point. So we've talked a lot. It's actually been only halfway done. We have more to go. But you heard about two different theories of change and cultural change, and we wanted your ideas. So this is something you're going to do. We'll give you a couple of minutes. And so what we're going to do, think about your organization. Take into account what America and Susan has talked about. And think to yourself and answer these questions for you. We'll give you about 2 minutes. We'll let you know when you're done. If you don't have pen and paper, phone, laptops, feel free. If you're out in the audience or you're watching this live or post, if you want to share on the comment section, feel free, that we talked about in LinkedIn. What do you think your organization is ready for in tech upskilling? In your own organization, which approach to change of the two that we talked about would work? Or even a combination, as we were talking about. If you have the pros and cons of each approach, like America and Susan talked about, think about that if you have time in your reflection. Are there other approaches you've seen that we haven't discussed? Because the reality is, we are but 3 people. You are many. So you might have something that you can share with the audience and teach beyond what we're talking about. And lastly, what would you need to get started? We taught 2 approaches: internal operations, take grant. What would work for you? So we'll give you 2 minutes. We'll let you know when we're done. And think to yourself, what could you do to do all these things? Okay. Where, thank you for doing your self-reflection or even group reflection. That's great. We appreciate that. America is going to continue the conversation, and we'll have a couple of other times to talk both amongst yourselves and have some interactivity. So that won't be the last time we're doing that. Thank you very much, and I hope you got some great things internally or with groups.
All right, so you're here to learn from us, and so the next thing is I want to share some of our lessons learned. We've put in, again, a lot of time and effort and resources into our program, and I wanted to share some of the things we've learned along the way. And so the first one is finding the right partner if you are going to hire a consultant. I think that goes anytime you're working on any type of project, but for us, at least for this project, it was so important. You know, we didn't find the right one at the beginning. We didn't find the right one, and so we just started the RFQ process again. We just said this is too important, and so we sent another RFP, started the process, and so that delayed us at the beginning. But I think that was really important because we did find the right partner, and we were able to then move along quicker and caught up with some of the time that we had lost. So I think that's important. Of course, somebody with legal aid background, nonprofit is always ideal, and then making sure that they understand your objectives and outcomes, really what you're trying to achieve, right? Again, we're very unique environment, and so making sure that they understand the complexity of legal aid, of our legal services, of funding, all of those things. And then making sure that you find an expert in training, that it's its own niche, and then also make sure that you find somebody with adult learning that realizes that people learn in different ways. Again, it's hard to find one of those, but it's definitely something that you'll benefit from. The next thing is that don't try to customize everything. Identify the things that are important to you as an enterprise organization. Identify those key enterprise systems, and those are the ones you can customize and spend more resources on. And then on the 365, Microsoft's, all those things, there's plenty of stuff out there that's free. There's a lot of tools, and Susan's gonna talk about some of those resources for you. But you have plenty of those out there, so you can use those and then really put your time and effort into creating something for those enterprise systems. For us, that's Legal Server. There isn't a lot out there to help us, and so that's where we're putting our time and effort. The next thing is that depending on the size of your organization, teaching and finding an ideal training program, and we learned this from our consultant who is, again, in academia. Doing an optimized program requires a lot of hand-holding, or there's different ways and different levels of programs that you can implement that will get you a different learning and education. So what I mean is that, for people to really understand and grasp what you're trying to teach them and learn, there is different ways that you can do that, right? One-on-one, you can do that, you can use e-learning tools, things like that. And so, if you're a larger organization, you might be able to do that, right? Because you have more resources. If you're a smaller organization, you may not be. And so that's where we had to learn that there is a balance between doing the ideal and what we would ideally like to see, and also using the resources we have available in an impactful way. And so we kind of have learned to kind of bend a little and say, okay, this is not what we were intending to go for, but this is what we can do with the resources that we have. And then last, make sure that you create a well-implemented program. You don't want to overwhelm your staff. I don't know if you guys are like us. We have 30-something systems that we found, right, from our assessment. And then also, too, people included partnerships, right? Like people wanted to learn about, WebEx. We don't sponsor WebEx in our organization, but we use it with partners where maybe our staff attend other meetings. And so they were asking us, can we train them on WebEx, right? And so, again, you have to prioritize and really, kind of go down and say, where do you want to invest and put your money and time in? And WebEx was not on our list, so we cut that. And then we prioritize the list and kind of reduce it to these are the ones we want to focus on, where people are having the most challenge in, where we need people to learn. And then from there, creating a plan where you're kind of rolling it out in phases and you're not having to train your staff on, 12 systems in 1 month. That's just not ideal, and they're not going to retain any information. And then also to add on top of that is thinking about maintaining and sustainability, and then the user experience as you're creating these programs. The user experience, obviously, that's really important, but also somebody needs to administrate the system in the program once it's completed and implemented, right? It's an ongoing thing. And so who's going to do that? And how are they going to do that? And so the process you create needs to really be with that in mind. Otherwise, again, it's just going to fall off and you're not going to maintain it. So you really need to think about those things. And I want to leave you guys with a commitment to structured learning is an investment in growth and, to a success for your staff and the organization. So again, this is a time commitment, but we see it as an investment and it'll pay off.
So we've talked about some partnerships that you've had through your TIG grant, and Susan, you did this mostly yourself, I'm guessing, within your team. Expert partnerships are one thing that could help you with that. And I want to be clear, there are definitely organizations that are statewide that have lots of resources that could do this on their own. There are also organizations, LC funded, that are 40 or 20 employees. So these things depend on the people who are in the room and what you have to offer. So what we've experienced in our conversations, there's about 3 things that you can do. You can, if you have the funding, TIG related or otherwise, other partners, or you have it from even a basic field grant if you wanted, if you're LSC, you can find an expert to invest in your organization if that's one way you want to choose. If you are an organization that has a learning and development staff on board, or you have someone who is interested in that and wants to maybe even upskill their own knowledge, that's one thing you could do too, as long as you don't stretch that resource too thin. You want to be fair to them and what they want to do in their roles. Now, what we've also seen, and we've kind of talked a little bit about, is that you can have a mix. You might even be able to bring in an expert to upskill that person to be the learning and development person, to bring a technology upskilling process to your own organization. So that's kind of the areas of partnerships you can do if you are interested in doing this in your own organization. So one thing that I am, amongst the many things I do, I've been an adjunct instructor for about 18 years. And currently what I do, and my class will probably be either watching this live or watching this after we recorded on YouTube, is evaluating me and us on what we've been doing and seeing if I've trained them and taught them correctly. And as you've already participated here live, and those of you who are watching, participating on your own now or even beyond this session when it's recorded, is audience participation. Every training session and every time I've talked to someone to coach them up or to make them a better presenter or speaker or educator, you have to have some type of participation. You have to have some type of interactivity. It's one of the best ways to get retention. So why do we have 2 more things coming up for you in the 15 minutes we have left? Because by the time you're done with this, you will have heard from 2 wonderful people who have lots of knowledge on how they've done things with both a TIG grant and without. You will have the conversations and maybe the introductions to people in this room that you may not have had before. Within your self-reflection you just did, hopefully you have some information further, or you've already written something down, which is a takeaway that you could do here or if you're watching this. And if you want 268 plus more ways to do audience interaction, Dr. Yee from the University of Central Florida has one of the best documents I've ever seen in my life for this. It is slightly geared toward academia and educating adults, so that helps, but it is an amazing collection of ways to teach. One I used recently was the reverse Socratic method. We have some attorneys in the room and on the panel, one. You probably know the Socratic method. As an instructor, what was interesting is the reverse of that is exactly what you think. I sat in the middle of a classroom, an audience, and I had my classroom ask questions of me. And I had to ask intriguing questions back to get them to think about what they just asked me in a way to answer their own question or move the conversation forward. It is not something I've ever done before. I had one of those students in that classroom say, "This is the most interesting thing I've done in 4 years at this university." That's one of 269 other things you can take from this document. So audience participation, when you're trying to build and grow, having interactivity is something I have to stress. So we want to make sure you had a resource for that too. Now, there are lots of other resources. LSE on section 12 on the baselines has a list of them. So you can see them, they're already out there from LSNTAP and 10. And Susan has some, I asked, is this from that list? She's like, no, there's more to go. So there's some other resources to help you do this in-house or even with a mix.
Yeah, I mean, I think that my perspective too is I started at a very, very small legal aid. At times, I was the only full-time staff employee, and so being able to say, okay, that's great. Like having a TIG is great, having support is great, having a learning management system is awesome, having expert partners is amazing. I need it to be free. And so that's really where this is coming in, is if you have, in-house resources, you may have a lot more in-house resources than you think. When I started doing Tech Tuesdays, I was doing them myself, but then I realized this is actually a really great development opportunity for my staff. I'm going to find a few people who maybe aren't experts on the technology, but if I make them present on it, they will learn it. And so, giving them the opportunity to say, I'm going to actually take this, I'm going to own it, I'm going to present it, it actually was a really great team building exercise because folks listen to their peers a lot more than they listen to their managers. And so that was a really powerful thing to do. Identifying those folks, giving them the time and space to do that if they're willing, making it part of their, again, development plan or something that you are encouraging them to do, making space for them to do is really something valuable. What resources are already provided by the vendors that you have? So for example, with Legal Server, there aren't a ton of trainings that you can just go and watch online, but there's good reasons for that, because every Legal Server instance is different. But there are Legal Server office hours, there's affinity groups, there's all sorts of different ways that you can check in with them, and so see what's already out there. See if there are ways that not just your tech staff, but your managers, your other staff can participate in those and learn more that they can use to do their job. Microsoft has a huge, huge library of resources, as we've talked about. There's almost no reason to reinvent the wheel with Microsoft trainings, unless you have those staff that only listen to you and not to any other trainers, in which case you may have to do a little bit of introduction. And also, don't just look at legal aid resources. There's so much resources around technology for nonprofits that's not specifically tailored to legal aid, but it overlaps a lot more than you might think. And so looking at resources like N10 and nonprofitready.org, places like your local library have a lot of training resources that you can be able to tap into. These are really great places to start, and again, allow you to start now with a $0 budget, and then again, hopefully build up from there.
Can I add one more thing to that list? We actually found through our search Procerta. It's also it's a software, and I mean, again, Microsoft training, specifically training legal staff. So the training is specifically on how to draft memos and from a legal perspective. We've been testing that system, and we'll probably launch it with our staff for the Microsoft piece. So again, there is a cost, but it's actually not that high. It's pretty affordable, so that's another one. It's by user. So that's another really great tool that you can use.
So to wrap this up, this is a little bit of a callback to the reflection that you just did on kind of how you think you can implement this at your organization. And this is how can you make sure that your program is effective? What are going to be the key metrics, the key things that you look at as you go forward to say, what what actually makes this effective? And so this is actually a form that we put together. You can get to it by going to the QR code up on the screen. If you're at home, hopefully it's a little easier to see. If you're in the audience, I apologize. I know that it's a little bit far away for some of you. But if you go ahead and submit those responses there, we'll start to see them populate up onto the screen. And really, this is a way for you to think through, what are you actually going for tech upskilling? Is it reduced stress on your staff from not having their frustrations with technology continue to mount, but actually being able to use it effectively? Is it reduced pressure on your IT team, that they're able to focus on more of your business processes and doing less kind of help desk type of work and answering the same basic questions over and over? Is it reduced time spent on each case because maybe you're working more efficiently?
Did you have a question?
We have a form problem?
Are others having the same?
No permission.
Oh, no, see, we have a
Oh.
technical.
Do we have
a
anyone
technical-
in IT in the house? We'll just go to the last.
Yeah, we can just go on to the next one, and
Yeah.
we'll have an opportunity for you
on.
to speak this. We'll let you share it out loud, and so we'll let you in the audience who are here today. What is the next thing that you are going to do to prepare your organization? Who do you need to get on board, and how will you know that your program has succeeded?
So let's do this for about 2 minutes, and we'll get a couple more feedback in the room, and we'll be done at that point. That'll be close to the end of our presentation. So these are the questions. What are the next things you're going to do? What do you need to get people on board on the idea? And how will you know that your program has been a success? If you go on to the LinkedIn conversation, we can do that there. Do that in this room. I'll tell you exactly when 2 minutes is up this time. We have 50 seconds left. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so it was only a few minutes, but we'd like to get your feedback. We now have 2 people walking around, so we don't have to have a runner. Let's share like 3 things that you think might be a reflection and something you would be interested to share with the audience here in post.
This is not just my question. It's a team question. What do you do when you have team members who are unwilling or unable to learn a skill and it impairs their ability to do their job? What's your answer, and what is your like line in the sand?
Are you letting HR answer this question, Susan?
Yeah. Not HR. I think, maybe, yeah.
That's, I think we all have those issues. So there's a couple of things. Are they unable to learn? Is it their ability to learn, or are they unwilling to learn? They don't want to take the time to, unwilling. That would be a performance management issue. So at that point, I think if you've given them the tools and they have everything they need to be able to learn and they just are unwilling, then you have to go down the performance management process, which is not something we like to do, but that's just the reality, and then help them along in that way.
And I just want to really underscore what America was saying about you have to give them the tools first. You have to give them the opportunity. You have to document that you gave them the opportunity. You have to have a clear baseline for what they're expected to do and be able to show that it's not happening. And so many of our organizations just don't have that training in place in the first place. And so really having these types of programs allows you to paint that clear picture of the goal and of the baseline, so that you can then have those conversations about, okay, this is not actually acceptable anymore. We're moving forward, we're moving into the 21st century.
And while we find the next question, under performance improvement plans and things like that, I know a lot of people think that PIPs are like your way to get someone out of an organization. I've honestly only had to do 2 of them in my career as a manager, and those people are still in their roles. And it is the exception, not the rule, but sometimes when you light a fire, you either find out someone who's been there for a long time is where they need to be or not. And hopefully it's the former. We have time for 2 more questions.
I guess similar to that question, what about when you're training them and they can't get it, they start asking their colleagues for help, and it kind of becomes a burden on other staff members? Like, what's your suggestion in that kind of situation?
I mean, I think, now that I'm sitting in the IT department, I can say this a little bit of there needs to be a clear path of where they can go with that question. They're going to their colleagues because they don't feel like they're getting the answer from where they're supposed to go, or they don't know where to go, right? And so addressing both of those things, here's where you go. And we're constantly, every meeting, we're email IT help desk, email IT help desk, email IT help desk. We repeat it because people forget and they don't remember the resource to go to. And then you also have to be mindful, and especially if you're a manager in the IT department, to be saying if people aren't coming to us, it's because they're not getting the help they need. And so really being mindful about, okay, let me not just fix this problem, but I'm going to sit down with this person and figure out why it keeps coming up, and what we can do to help them have this question maybe once a month instead of every day.
The only thing that I would add to that with Susan is, I think especially if you guys have multiple locations, we have 4 different locations, and so sometimes people just go to whoever's available, right? Because in our situation, IT is in the home base, which is, if somebody's in Compton or Norwalk, right? Sometimes it's just easier to walk down the door and ask for questions. And reasonably, that it makes sense, but again, it does become to be a burden to some people sometimes, and it takes them away from their actual work. And so really, I think explaining the impact that that's having, right, to the person, that by them going and taking them away from and giving, having them do this, instead they're taking them away from doing that, which oftentimes it's client services. And so seeing it from that perspective. And we actually did have, we do have a staff member in which we had to do that specific conversation. And once we explained it in that way of client impact, it just hit and it just made sense, right? Because we're all committed to our work here and to helping clients, as many as we can. And he just understood that. And so that's another way to try to mitigate. And then again, I don't want to stress this enough, but if that doesn't work, then going back to supervisor management as, that's just not the person that you go to, and giving them the right path to get their answers. I think we have time for...
Do one more. Hi. I'm wondering if there are any tests, like post-tests out there. So we record a lot of trainings for our staff, especially with onboarding everybody sits and watches, hours of training, and we always say, oh, ask us if you have questions or let me know. But are there things like, let's say you watch this one training and then you take a post-test, or, are there tools that you can use to know that they're actually watching it and understanding it and getting it?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Our program will actually have a pre and post assessment, and then Procerta has the same thing. And so that's why we really like Procerta, because you go through the pre-assessment, and if they pass a certain baseline, they don't even have to complete the training, right? And so that's what you want ideally. You don't want somebody with advanced skills to spend the time doing a training if they're already competent. And then it has the post-assessment, and then the great thing with Procerta, and they're not paying me for this, or I'm not getting a discount either, but the great thing about that, maybe I will make them now. I'll have them watch the live stream. But one of the great things that they have is actually their training is actually doing the thing, right? And so you have to take a Word document, download it, do what you're asking it to do, upload it into their system to see if you actually did it correctly. So that's really great. And then I also wanted to add in regards to assessments, part of the work that we've been doing is creating assessments, and our consultant helped us with creating the questions, right? He's in academia, so of course he was able to create questions for us. Not for every system, because again, we had to prioritize, but with the ones that he didn't create, we actually have been playing around with ChatGPT and asking it to create questions for specific competencies. I will say it's not 100%, and you do have to go through and really look and make sure that it's what you're asking it to do, but I see some potential there. That's a good way to use it. We're, again, just started dabbling into kind of creating questions, analyzing, but that's something that you could potentially use.
Yeah, I just want to say that kind of question and that kind of thing is exactly what a learning management system is for. And so that's what we ended up starting to build. Ours is LMS 365 because we were already on SharePoint, and so it builds right in. One of the tools that they just rolled out is the ability to upload a document and say, hey, AI, generate some questions out of this document for me. So you can actually have a transcript of your video. I need some multiple choice questions out of this transcript, and then you can start building your assessments from there. I think
I'd say, so I see this all the time. When I'm teaching, I review about 240 to 300 presentations a year. What I've seen is people use Kahoot, quizzes, and everything that your kids are probably seeing in high school for assessments and evaluations. If you have kids that are doing that, that's what they find, and it's really good. Watching people hear something, we were thinking of doing one after this, but we went to other options. So you can do things for free too if you don't have those resources, which are great resources as well. So I want to thank you very much for all of your time. We love the conversation, and I want to make sure that you go to the conference app and fill out a survey and let us know what you thought about this presentation. Thank you very much for your time.